Yeah, welcome into the Friday edition. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Friday morning. Hope everybody's off to a fabulous start to their day today. We got a lot to get into on the program today. We'll have Ben McKee from Go Balls 24/7 with us on the program at 6:30. Tennessee taking on Alabama tomorrow at Neyland Stadium, the third Saturday in October. Looking forward to that. Jared Stillman will be with us at 7 o'clock. And Teron Davenport at 8 o'clock, looking ahead to the Titans and the Buffalo Bills coming up on Sunday. Joe Rexrode, good morning. How are you?
Doing all right. Big homecoming parade and game here at Dance this weekend in Nolensville High. So in-laws in town, ready to go, baby.
That's a big weekend. Big weekend for the Nolensville Knights.
And then I'm leaving everybody behind to go see some Bama, Tennessee tomorrow. So you know what this means, Robby? Robby, you there?
Have we lost Robby?
I think. Okay, is that what it is? Okay.
I don't
I
know.
lost you for a second. You there?
All good.
Is Rexrode there? Okay. Is he back? He's back. There we go. We got
So-
Rexrode.
So wait a minute. So wait a minute. Who left? Because Nick came in my ear and said, "Have we lost Robby?" So which one?
Well, maybe it was me.
Who did the listener miss? We need this on the text line. Who did you not hear for
Robby for sure.
Okay. So listen. Here's what this means, real quick, is that I am not going to be allowed to intimidate on the first date my daughter. Very disappointing.
That's very sad. That's very sad. Very sad.
Father-in-law will step in, do a great job.
There we go. Keyser, how we doing? What's going on?
Doing well. Had the good old pot of coffee on this morning. Much needed after last night's game. Aside from the result, obviously. But yeah, good to be here this morning. And I'm just very grateful that we have an afternoon game tomorrow and the Vols are playing. So there you go.
Yes, no doubt about that. Edmonton wins 4-2 last night, Rexrode. So that means the Predators are off to an 0-4 start to this season. Look, it was better than the Seattle game, so I will give them that. They did not give up, 1,000 odd man rushes to the Seattle Kraken or to the Edmonton Oilers like they did the Seattle Kraken. So there was some progress made there. However, not enough offense generated from the Predators last night. I think they were credited with like 4 high danger chances through the first 2 periods last night. Now they did play better in the third period, Joe, but too little, too late once again. And here we are. And they're kind of staring in the face of an 0-4 start. And as you can imagine, panic starting to set in for the Nashville Predators fan base. My Twitter mentions are all over the place right now when it comes to the Predators. I thought Jonathan Marchessault had some interesting comments after the game last night and just kind of, I think, did a good job of laying out where this Predators team is at right now. Here's what Predators forward Jonathan Marchessault had to say after the game last night.
How do you balance the frustration of losing with not getting 2 downs, staying positive, trying to find that first one?
Yeah, I mean, right now I think we're a little fragile group. Like we're at the beginning of the season, it's not going like we want, and in the off season, everybody says how good you guys are going to be and everything, and we maybe have to think that we're a good team, but not good enough. We got to work harder than the opponent, and sometimes that's something that they did last year, and that's as a new guy, I just want to come in and try to jump in that boat and help them be successful again. So, it's really disappointed for a group, but preparation starts right now for Saturday.
So that was Jonathan Marchessault, who, by the way, scored his first goal as a Pred last night. Talked to Joe about them being fragile right now, and basically talking about how all off season long, people tell you how good you're going to be, and maybe they need to adopt the mindset that you still have confidence, but they ain't that good, and you got to start working harder than the opponent. I thought some interesting stuff from Jonathan Marchessault, who was excellent in his post game interview last night.
Yeah, good stuff, and kind of. I mean, I think there's obviously got to be some truth to that, right? Yeah, which is, is to be expected. We've already talked about all the mentions of summer hockey and trying to be too fancy and trying to win with skill and all that stuff. It seems, Robby, like maybe, where they'd already gotten to in that process, maybe a lesser opponent, they win last night, right? Yeah. So I mean, it really comes down to, okay, well, you can't get swept by the Red Wings, which is another fringe playoff team I would expect from Detroit this year. Win that game and then move on. I mean, that's at this point to me, it's like get one win and then get that over with, right?
Yes.
As quickly as possible, and then keep working on. It's going to be a long time before they're at their best, but they should be good enough to win some hockey games and kind of even things out. And I do think that Saturday is a very critical outcome for them.
Yeah, I mean, you're 0-4, and again, I've said it all week. Like, it's a long hockey season, and I'm not saying that you want to deal with 4 losses in a row. There are many times throughout a season where even good teams will lose 3 or 4 in a row. Having said that, you don't really want that to take place to start off a season. And I will say, like, we have now approached the point where you're digging yourself in a hole. Like 0-2 is one thing, and even 0-3, it's like, all right, well, that's not ideal, but you can pull yourself out of it. You can pull yourself out of an 0-4 start, but this is a hole. There's no doubt about that. Like you've reached the point now where you've dug yourself a hole, and you're now playing catch up a little bit. So you got to start with one. Like I think Saturday's game is critical for them to win. You do not want to get to 0-5 because then the negativity just starts to creep in. And the other part of this, Joe, and it didn't quite play out this way last year because they were a pretty good team on the road. But the bottom line is, like, 8 of their first of 11 are at home, right? And they're going to spend a lot of time on the road in November. And I understand that whether it's the Dallas Stars, who are a really good team, Edmonton obviously is a really good team. Seattle, I would not classify as a really good team, but they do have good players and have good depth. And I like the offseason that they had. They've played some good opponents at home. So there is that you have to factor in. But the bottom line is you've also been at home. Like you got to find a way to win some of these games when you're at home, particularly when 8 of your first of 11 are going to be at Bridgestone Arena, and you're going to be on the road basically all month in November.
Yeah, no question. What was Edmonton's start last year?
I don't remember exactly what they were. I want to say it was something like 1-7-2 or something. Like it was something stupid.
Yeah.
Like it was
crazy.
It may not have been that bad, but it was pretty close to that bad.
Yeah. So maybe just try to angle for that. Angle for that exact start, and then that's the new formula in the West to get through to the West. Just
Might be.
But no, I mean,
remember when St. Louis was the worst team in the league, and everybody said, "Well, just St. Louis for like the next 4 years." You can do it. St. Louis did it.
Yeah, see, it does happen. These things do happen. So, but yeah, you don't want to. Yeah, you just want to. You want to, like you said, you want to take advantage of home ice. I mean, people are so excited about this team, and that's the thing. I mean, Mark just so spoke to that, right? I mean, it's like everybody wants it so bad to be so amazing right from the start. I mean, I don't know how much of that's still a factor, right? Like the cold water on the face has been splashed at this point. And now
Yes.
it gets into, now it's almost like the other way. Like, okay, so what's the formula for winning? Where's the confidence, right? Like, I think, one thing interesting I thought Brunette said last night was, the big moments right now, or I think that's what he said, right? Like this team is struggling with the big moment, which I thought was interesting. I mean, I guess at this point, every moment is big because now when you start out with a losing streak, it can get, streaks can be good and bad, can get really, it's a snowball rolling downhill on you.
Well, and the bottom line is, like, people are going to look at Stamkos, right? Stamkos does not have a point through the first 4 games, which is no doubt very disappointing. And I think he's had a couple of great looks, had a couple more last night. And I still, he scored 40 goals last year. He's one of the greatest goal scorers of the generation. I don't think that he's all of a sudden forgotten how to play hockey. I think to some degree, and maybe not to this degree, but to some degree, I expected a slow start for him and for Marchessault specifically. And we've talked about that. Like, there's just a lot of new. and you got to figure out what works for them. And obviously, they still have not figured out, the right combinations for them. We'll see if they stick with, Stamkos, Novak, and Evangelista. I didn't think that they were overly good last night, but we'll see if they stick with that moving forward. I'm less concerned about him, and I'm less concerned about Marchessault than I am some of the other guys right now, right? Like Philip Forsberg, the numbers would tell you, like he's got, I think now 4 points in 4 games. So that's a point per game pace. You'll take it. But he has not been dominant, right? Like I thought he had a couple of shifts against Dallas where he took over the game. And that's basically it. Like it's got to be better from him than what it's been. O'Reilly, I would put in the same boat. I don't think he's been very good. Nyquist has been borderline invisible. I don't think Roman Yossi's been that good so far. So I'm less concerned right now with like the Stamkos and the Marchessault part of it. I think they'll eventually figure out how to make that work. The other guys who have been here, who have been in the system, who are not playing up to snuff right now, that would be where most of my disappointment falls for 4 games into the year.
I do feel like if Stamkos goal would be a big boost for the team. You know what I mean?
And I think they're looking for him too much, if that makes any sense. Like I think
they want it to happen too much,
especially on the power play. I think that they're trying so hard to get that one-timer set up for him that they're passing up some other shots. Like Marchessault last night had a puck all alone in the middle of the slot on the power play and just gave it up. Forsberg, I think, is looking way too much for Stamkos right now and not using the shot that he's got. And I know they got one on the power play last night on the rush with Marchessault, but like I think they're looking for Stamkos a little bit too much right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because obviously everybody wants him to. And the thing is, like, if he wasn't getting looks at all our opportunities, and then maybe you're more concerned, right? I mean, like that'll even out for him. But that's an interesting, it is like the whole. I think it was. I guess I was listening to Hal Gill talking to Stilly yesterday, talking about that too, like the pass versus the shot with this team. Sometimes it looks like there's just a little bit of hesitation. Again, stuff like that. All these things that we're talking about, they're not out of the blue. They're not totally unexpected, right? It's just like just get a win, and then keep working on them.
Yeah, there's no doubt. They need a win tomorrow against Detroit. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, an interesting development with the Titans offense that I don't know that I've seen before in the National Football League. We'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Check out Nashville's best deal this week. It's Staley's Chicago Italian Dining right here in Nashville. One of the best kept secrets in the city. Staley's Chicago Italian Dining brings amazing Italian food to the South, including original Italian beef sandwiches, Vienna Chicago-style hot dogs, and the best gyros south of Chicago. Head to theGameNashville.com/deals to get half off a $20 gift card while supplies last. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode. We'll have Ben McKee from Go Balls 24/7 coming up at 6:30. We'll get into Tennessee and Alabama with him. So looking forward to that. Joe, the Titans taking on the Buffalo Bills on Sunday. A lot of conversation on the offense this week. Some interesting comments from Nick Holtz yesterday, which I'm going to bring up here in a second. I did, however, Joe, and you kind of read my mind when you put this on our show grid because you're a genius, as we've discovered earlier this week. Terry McCormick put this up yesterday, and I read it, and I was like, okay. So I saw this from Terry McCormick, among other places, but Terry McCormick's tweet, I'll read, quote, "The Titans' entire offense sat down and watched every pass play Monday from Sunday's game. They critiqued every read, every protection, every decision as to where the ball went." So apparently the offense sat down together and watched every single pass play from Sunday's game, and they went over, I guess, everything that's possibly involved in the passing game together. Now, Joe, fans may hear that and they may say, okay, well, don't they do that like every week? And I think they do sit down and obviously watch film, and they're with their position groups and all that. I don't know that I've seen anything talked about like with an entire offense, like collectively sitting down together and just evaluating the passing game. What'd you make of that?
Yeah, I have not. That this is not, the way they typically do it, and I'm sure they also did this, but the way they typically do it is the quarterback room, we're going to go through the quarterback stuff. The offensive line room, we're going to go through the obvious things, right? Everybody's talking about their position group, what they did, what their role is on a play, and that's it. They're not, granted, in the receiver room, they may be like, oh man, sure wish I got the ball on that play. Well, look at the route I ran there, huh? Well, I did that perfectly, but that's not what this is. This is like, let's all sit here. And it just sounds to me, because when it comes down to it, I know that protections were part of the things included there, right? Yeah. But it does seem to me it's like everybody getting a chance to rip Levis.
Yeah, it kind of does.
It's
like, wow, look at how many routes you missed and how many balls you could have thrown that you didn't. Awesome.
It's just a really interesting, again, not that I'm sure the response to that would be, well, the point is it isn't all on him. I'm sure there are plays where it's like, see, like Calvin, this was actually supposed to be this, or okay, well, JC, whatever, like right here, if you or whatever, if you guys would have communicated on this twist, look at what we had downfield. I'm sure it wasn't all like, okay, everybody, you say what you think of what Will did on this play. But it does, when it comes down to it, the way he has played, I would have to think there's a lot of that, right? A lot of, well, everything was fine except the quarterbacking on this play.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a fun experience for Will Levis to do that with the entire team. It was, Nick Holtz talked about this yesterday. Obviously there's a ton of attention on Ridley this week, right? And his comments after the game and trying to get him the ball. And when you have 8 targets and don't catch the ball, that's going to be a red flag. He talked about the second play of the game is where the ball should have gone to Ridley. So, Ridley talked about not getting the ball early enough in the game. Well, then Zach Lyons, put up the film yesterday on Twitter, right? And you could see the second play of the game, and it ended up being like a swing pass, I think, to Pollard. And Ridley's one-on-one on the outside and actually beats his man basically, over the middle with a slant route. And Levis just doesn't go there, either doesn't see it, gets through the progression too quickly, and Ridley's wide open on that play. And Holtz talked yesterday about how the ball should have gone to Ridley on that play. So that's just one example, I'm sure, of what was a fun film session for the team. I'm glad they got in there as a group and looked at it together.
Another example of Garski's piece being ridiculous. Right? So there's one of those, got the ball out. The verdict must be, and they must just want to do that. The OC actually came out and said, no, see this play? We want him to go downfield here, and he didn't.
Right.
again, of course that also blows up my theory a little bit because I really did think the whole beginning was all just for getting that red zone TD. But I mean, some of those screens were definitely screens. That one was, I guess, would be the one that wasn't. But yeah, it's interesting. And then you've got, did you hear D Mace at all yesterday?
Yeah,
going off on Levis.
Yeah, I did.
I don't know. I just feel like everybody around here is just overreacting to everything, man. I mean, Levis and actually I heard Chris Sanders, kind of agreeing on this with Stilly too. We can ask him at the top of the hour. Levis had the line of like on the Ridley thing, I can do better, he can do better. I suppose I would agree. Like I would just advise someone to just stick with I can do better on that. But also like I don't know that it's worth like, it's like it's some humongous issue to say that or to talk about. This is what D-Mace got mad about too, was Levis talking about how they need to get the play in faster. At times they don't have a real chance to like look at the defense, right? Free snap and things like that. But that's true. I mean, whatever it is, he didn't specify whose fault that is, but that has been true. They're getting delay of games or having to call timeouts or at least having to rush snaps, right? What's wrong with saying that?
He did also say, I think in that same comment of, as you all know, we had a bad practice today. And it's like, well, we didn't really know that, but thank you for letting us know. It's good stuff. And that was going back to Wednesday, which I don't really care about. I think it's kind of funny, but D-Mace had a problem with that too.
Well, yes. Now, my question on that is because that comment, I was like, okay, so someone else said that at some point.
I don't know.
Right?
Don't know. I
guess he just thinks that everybody watches practice, even though they're not actually out there.
I don't know. I don't know. It's pretty funny. As you all are well aware, we had a terrible practice today.
We didn't know that, but we do know you're 1-4.
Yeah, thank you, Will. I appreciate that. Look, the only thing that I've really had an issue with Will Levis saying in the media this week is what he said immediately after the game on Sunday of, well, my arm, if it would have been 100%, probably could have got a little bit more on that throw and the interception. It's like, man, I think it's a little bit of a lack of awareness of what you're talking about there. That's really the only problem I've had with what Levis has said this week.
Yeah. When you're as late as he was on that throw, then if you have like a Star Wars space laser that you can get the ball there, then you're probably fine. And otherwise, probably not.
Yeah, if you are equipped with the Death Star, you can probably complete that pass. Anthony says the press and the Titans are the same. I was told to be excited. Look at all these elite players we've got in free agency, and I haven't seen an exciting play yet on the ice or on the field. This from I guess the Preds and the Titans are the same. It says the press.
So I thought you were blaming us, Anthony. My goodness, I was about to take off on Anthony. But yes, the Preds. Yeah, it's a tough start. We're talking about 1-8, huh, for the local professional teams.
Not very good. I did see Clark Lee at the game last night and talked with him a little bit. They're off to a fine start.
Hey, Vanderbilt's carrying the flag. I mean, tough year for Nashville SC. Hey, Vanderbilt is Nashville or Obi-Wan, you're our only hope.
Yeah, pretty much what it is.
Diego, Obi-Wan, Pavia, your only hope.
Coming up next, we'll be joined by Ben McKee from Go Vols 24/7. We'll get his thoughts on the matchup tomorrow at Neyland Stadium between Tennessee and Alabama. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Friday morning. The Tennessee Vols back at home tomorrow, taking on Alabama, the third Saturday in October. Should be fun. And to help us talk more about that, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And welcome in our friend Ben McKee from Go Vols 24/7. Ben, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Happy to speak with you, Robby, especially. Also happy to speak to the grammar police over there, Mr. Rexrode.
Man.
Wow.
I'm kidding. I'm great this morning. I hope y'all are as well.
Wow.
No,
Well,
I know. I get like that. I'm sorry, man.
the more
It's
shots you can
okay.
take at Rexrode, the better I'll be. So, Ben, just keep them going.
Well, I agree. You know, some of us were not blessed with the Michigan State education like Mr. Rexrode and Mike Wilson. So I'm just trying to stay afloat each morning.
It's the Harvard of East Lansing.
Yes.
In case you're wondering.
Yes, it is. Well, Ben, obviously, this is a huge game. Anytime Tennessee and Alabama get together, it's a big game. Having said that, after watching Tennessee the last 2 weeks and watching Alabama the last 2 weeks, I have no idea what to expect in this game tomorrow. What about you? What do you make of this matchup and the way these two teams are playing heading into it?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't really know what to think either. I've felt like a dummy all week trying to assess this football game. I don't know that I have much quote unquote expertise. Not that I have any to begin with, but I don't know that I have much to offer up, just because both football teams are in such an odd place. And what makes it so odd for me this week is just seeing Alabama in a place that I've never really seen Alabama in. And I'll make Rexrode feel old for a moment. 06, 07, when Saban took over, I was in middle school. So in middle school, like you're not, I mean, you have an awareness of games, but you're not keeping track of the day-to-day stuff like we do now. So I've never really had to assess an Alabama football team that has looked, I think dysfunctional is the right word. Now, I think it's unfair to lump the Alabama offense in with the Alabama defense, but you talk to Tennessee fans and there's not a lot of confidence on their end. I went to high school in Huntsville, Alabama, and I have a bunch of friends that went to Bama and graduated as well, and they don't have a lot of confidence either. There's been some funny text messages in the group chats this week. It's just an odd place. It's an odd matchup because you have each team's strength matched up with the other team's strength, that being Alabama's offense versus Tennessee's defense. And then you have each team's weakness matched up with the other's weakness in the Tennessee offense against the Alabama defense. So to me, as long as one of these strengths, as long as the Alabama offense or the Tennessee defense doesn't get exposed, it's going to come down to which weakness is going to be able to execute better than it has all season. Is the Tennessee offense finally going to click? And I don't say that to suggest that I think clicking means scoring 40, 50 points, but they missed several deep passes down the field last week. What if they hit 2 of those on Saturday afternoon, tomorrow afternoon? Then you probably feel good about Tennessee's chances of winning the game. And then for Alabama, there's just been a ton of issues defensively, pushed around on the line of scrimmage. The linebackers consistently look confused. Defensive backs are throwing temper tantrums, and they're not the defensive backs that we saw under Nick Saban. So there's a lot of issues for Alabama defensively. So which weakness, which unit can step up and execute better than it has all season? That's going to be the difference in the football game.
So on the Tennessee weakness, I think that's totally agree with you, Ben. It's a fascinating strength versus strength and then weakness versus weakness. And I've frankly been stunned from afar watching Tennessee just not be able to pass the football, especially the last couple of weeks. And I think obviously a lot goes into that. There's protection, there's the receivers, and then there's Nico. If as you evaluate those elements of this offense, Ben, how much do you put on each thing? I mean, if Nico, like you said, if Nico just sort of snaps to playing like he did early in the year, granted, against weaker opponents, but just hit some of those throws, is it that simple? Or is the protection and I guess the lack of it of dominance with the other areas, does that deserve more attention than him at this point?
It's everybody. And I know that's just the simplistic answer, but I really do believe that's the case. I think the offensive line is the root of the issue, not the only issue, like you were saying. I don't think it's the only issue, but I do think it's the vast majority of the issue, especially over there at both tackle spots. I think that it is throwing everybody off. I think it's throwing Josh Heupel and Joey Halsley's play calling off because they don't feel confident in calling anything. They don't trust the offensive line to protect when calling anything. So I think their play calling has been conservative more than you would like for it to be because of the lack of trust. And the running game has not been able to get going consistently despite Dylan Sampson having an awesome season because there have not been holes to run through consistently. But then there's also times where, of course, Nico has made bad decisions last week, throwing in the triple coverage, trying to force a football that he shouldn't have and got picked off. And then there were other passes to where he missed receivers that were open that against the Floridas and the Alabamas and Georgias and potential playoff games, you have to hit in order to win. And you kind of got away with one last week. Now, they're not all on Nico because there are some fine details within wide receiver play that maybe the common football fan like myself just do not understand because I did not play receiver at that level. And Josh Heupel kind of alluded to that earlier this week in his press conference of there being one where a receiver could have bent his route differently to maybe give Nico a better throwing angle. So there's little things like that on the receivers' end to where they can help out Nico as well. And the receivers have dropped passes as well this season. You saw it with Nimrod against Florida. You saw it with Squirrel and others in the games prior to Florida. There's been some talk about the receivers not running the correct depth on routes, which if you're not running the correct depth, then obviously that's going to throw Nico off as well. So Josh Heupel summed it up perfectly last Saturday night. It's everybody taking their turn, but I do believe the offensive line is the root of the issue. This is a line of scrimmage league. Look at South Carolina and Vanderbilt's performance against Alabama. They were able to Vanderbilt was able to win because they pushed Alabama around in the line of scrimmage, and they got great quarterback play from Diego Pavia as well. And then South Carolina should have won that football game last week because of how they pushed Alabama around in the trenches as well. So for Tennessee to win tomorrow, it's going to have to win the line of scrimmage, of course, and then it's going to have – Nico doesn't have to be Diego Pavia, but you're going to have to hit some of those throws that were open against Florida. And I guess it comes down to whether you're a glass half full type of person or a glass half empty because Josh Heupel pointed out, like, some of the plays that are not being made, they're not being made by guys who have made them in the past. And it does appear like they're just a tick off here or there, and maybe with a more consistent protection that prevents Nico from seeing ghosts, maybe, because I do think the protection is impacting Nico as well to where he has a clean pocket, but he's not expecting a clean pocket because there has not been a clean pocket consistently this year. So if they can protect and if
So Ben, on the defensive side of the ball, obviously it's just a massive loss for them with Keenan Peely being out for the year. So with Carter and T-Lander and that group now, how big of a loss do you think that will be? How equipped is Tennessee in your mind on defense to handle that loss?
Yeah, it's a huge loss. I would go as far as to say it's devastating. I really do believe that. Now, I think that they can overcome the loss of Keenan Peely, but it's just not an ideal situation. And first and foremost, like you really feel bad for Keenan Peely because this is back-to-back years now where injuries have cost him his season. And, I mean, he was dealing with a labrum injury coming out of the Arkansas game and went into the Florida game dealing with what I believe was a torn labrum. And here he is now tearing his ACL. And he's just been through a lot. And you feel for somebody who does everything the right way, especially in today's day and age of college athletics and all the drama that can go on behind the scenes. Like Keenan Peely was the finest example of what a college athlete should be. And he was also playing terrific football. I don't think, because of the injuries the last 2 years, I don't think fans really got to see just how good of a football player Keenan Peely was. So it's devastating, quite frankly. And now they have to lean on some inexperience. Now I do think that they are equipped to overcome the loss, but they are going to have guys step up quickly and grow in a hurry, because T-Lander and Carter, they've played a decent amount of football by this point, but they're still, at least in terms of class, they're still inexperienced, and they're going to have to really lean on those two guys. I think Carter's been playing pretty solid football. I think T-Lander has really been playing good football. I don't know that people are appreciating how well he has played when he has been thrown into the game. He had a really nice performance at Arkansas, and then he looked the part against Florida last weekend. So it seems like T-Lander's going to be the guy that gets the majority of the green dot responsibilities with the in-helmet communication. Tim Banks and the other coaches maintain this week that they'll kind of rotate, but it seems like T-Lander will shoulder most of that responsibility. And I do think that he and Carter are capable of making plays, but in this league, in the SEC, against Alabama and against Georgia, even against Vanderbilt now, I mean, you're going to need more than two inside linebackers in this league. And they're going to need a Jalen Smith to step up. Maybe they can get Edwin Stillman back healthy here in the next couple of weeks, and maybe he can contribute as a true freshman. Caleb Perry is going to play more now than ever. They need him to step up. So I do think they have some athleticism there. They're just inexperienced, and they need those guys to grow up in a hurry.
So Ryan Williams, just an absolute ridiculous talent. And to me, it's just like, I mean, it really is. It's Alabama's bread and butter. It's just Milroe to Williams making a couple big plays in a game could be the difference. How do you think Tennessee deals with him, Ben? I mean, is this special treatment type of game for him?
Did you know he's 17 years old?
No way. I had not heard that.
Yeah, I had not either. I just read that in the notes, but I don't. I mean, he will get special treatment, of course, because I mean he's the best receiver in the SEC. I don't think that they'll have Jermon McCoy follow him around the field. That's just not been how they operate under Tim Banks. Ricky Gibson has his side of the field. Jermon McCoy has his side of the field. So whichever side Ryan Williams lines up on, those two guys are going to get their fair share of opportunities to defend him. And I am glad that I am not responsible for slowing down Ryan Williams, because he is one heck of an athlete and a very fun football player to watch. But of course, they'll do some finer details to give him more attention than the common football fan will see. I'm sure they'll shadow him with safeties, and I don't know, maybe somebody else chips in with coverage, a linebacker and nickel. I'm not sure how they'll go about it in that regard. But I don't think that they'll have Jermon McCoy. That's kind of been the question this week that fans have been asking. Is Jermon McCoy going to follow Ryan Williams around? I don't think so, because that's not been their MO. And Ricky Gibson is playing really good football. He had a really strong game against Florida. I think you feel somewhat comfortable of allowing Ricky to have his opportunities to defend him as well. So those two corners are playing really well for Tennessee right now, especially coming out of that Florida game. I thought that was the best performance Tennessee has received from a pair of corners in quite some time. That's obviously been a bugaboo for Tennessee the last several years, and you would not have known that by watching those two guys play last week. So they'll both get their fair share of opportunities, and that's going to be a key piece to this game. Boo Carter as well. Everybody talks about Ryan Williams, rightfully so, first and foremost, but there are some other Alabama receivers that are very capable of beating you as well. So Boo Carter also played his best game of his young career last weekend, and those three guys in particular, they're going to have another strong performance, because Alabama's receivers are a handful, and Jalen Milroe, he is not afraid to let his arm loose. Even if he may struggle more with the short to intermediate passes than he does the deep passes, he's not afraid to let it rip. And I do think he has improved as a passer from last year to this year, even within those intermediate throws. So a big game for Boo Carter, Jermon McCoy, and Ricky Gibson. One of the matchups within the matchups I'll be watching very closely tomorrow.
Yep, no doubt about that. Ben, it's going to be fun tomorrow. Really looking forward to it. Thanks so much for joining us this morning to help us break it down, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hope you'll have a great weekend.
Absolutely, you as well. Ben McKee from GoVols 24/7, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. We'll react a little bit more to what Ben had to say. Continue to look ahead to Tennessee and Alabama coming up tomorrow at Neyland Stadium. Jared Stillman at 7 o'clock. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Tennessee taking on Alabama tomorrow at Neyland Stadium. Appreciate Ben McKee for hopping on with us to help us break down that matchup. Joe, it's a really fascinating game. We talked about it some yesterday, just in terms of the expectation for the game and not really knowing what to expect, given the way that both teams are playing heading into this. I am really interested to see how does Tennessee's defense stack up against this Alabama offense? I do think this is the biggest test the defense will have had to this point, right? I mean, think about the teams that they played. I definitely would not call Florida's offense very good. It's not a great offense. NC State, not very good. Oklahoma does not have very good offense. Arkansas, not bad. Like they looked great that night. I mean, they were putting the ball, Taylor Green putting the ball exactly where he wanted to put it. They ran the ball well on Tennessee. So I think this is certainly the biggest test for Tennessee's defense. But I'm watching South Carolina last week, Joe, and their front four was giving Alabama fits. And you watch that and you think to yourself, well, Tennessee should have the opportunity to do that in this game with the front that they bring to the table, even without Keenan Peely. So there's a lot about this matchup that is really intriguing to me with Alabama's offense and Tennessee's defense. You brought up the Ryan Williams part of it. Anytime you've got him, you've got an incredible weapon if you're Alabama. But I am interested to see, what is Tennessee's pass rush and what does their front four look like in this game? Because South Carolina had a lot of success in that area last week.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that Tennessee is going to get a lot of stops in this game. I think they're going to get tackles for loss. I think they're going to get sacks. And I think you're going to see that front absolutely have some success. Alabama's offensive line, they have some talent for sure. Caden Proctor transferred to Iowa for 5 minutes and then came back. They've got some talent up there. But I think Tennessee's front is going to, especially at home, is going to have a lot of big plays. The question for me is, do they keep Alabama from the big plays that are enough to push this game over the top and push it Alabama's way? That's both Milroe as a runner. That is where, to me, Alabama, their backs are good, but they don't have the great back. But Milroe as a runner is so, and again, it's just when you include the QB in the run game the way they do, it makes it tougher on the defense. And then, like Ben was saying, the deep shots for Milroe, that's Ben Milroe's game. And he definitely has improved. DeBoer has improved him as an all over the field passer, but that's still the big concern. And I think Ben's exactly right. I can't remember a Tim Banks defense having a corner travel with someone. I don't, but it's just a matter of how are they going to try to bracket him extensively in this game? I mean, he's just such a ridiculously good player. So that's just a great matchup. It's a great matchup. And as we've talked all week, Peely's a loss, but they have depth, they have talent there, and we're going to find out, about the back end. Ben mentioned, those corners playing well against Florida. They give up the late touchdown on a kind of a broken play and a great play by Lagway, but that play was one where, the safety, man, is a little bit more depth. You have a chance there. That to me is this game, the safeties, can they keep things in front of them? They're going to have to help, especially when Milroe gets going to the run game, but can they keep things in front of them and not give up those big plays that can switch a game like this? Because I really don't think it's going to be a very high scoring game. I don't.
Well, this is also a game too, where if you're Tim Banks and you're that Tennessee defense, you got to be real careful when you're playing man, because the last thing you want to do is play man. Milroe breaks the pocket and you turn around, and by the time you see him, he's 25 yards down the field. You got to be his ability to pull it and run, both in the design run game, which Alabama will lean into heavily tomorrow, and just breaking the pocket. I thought Tennessee actually did a pretty decent job containing him last year in the game in terms of him running the ball. He broke loose for a couple in the second half, but for the most part, they did a decent job of containing him. I think keeping him in the pocket going to be a big part of the plan tomorrow. And maybe that does result, Joe, in less straight up rushing the passer. You got to be pretty intentional with what you're doing rushing him, but you got to be really careful when you're playing man coverage tomorrow.
Yeah, and I don't think we'll see too much of it. I think in some situations, in the red zone and things like that, when you have to. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's where you get in man, and then one side of the field is cleared out, and he's a nightmare for you. So that's the thing. So I think Tennessee is probably going to give him those quicker access throws and his own looks, and that's what you hope is if you have to give some of that up and they move between the 20s, then that's fine. But then you also hope that your rush gets home, that you absolutely don't give them any tailback run game, and that that worst case they're trying some field goals on you. And then you see how many points you can score, and that's I'm with Ben. I mean, I think plays are going to be there. I do. I think plays are going to be there for Nico. There's going to be some, and they need the tempo. They really need to.
You got to lean into that.
Yeah, they need to use that as a weapon. I just feel like because things have been so discombobulated, and I think Ben, I think it's a good point. Like when you don't have confidence in protection and your tackles being able to handle their business, that does change things. But I feel like you need to see some drives where Tennessee's really pushing that pace and making it tough and forcing Alabama to fake injuries.
Yep, 615-737-1025, our phone number. We'll be joined by Jared Stillman coming up next. We'll get his thoughts on the Titans and the Bills. I guess his concern level with the Predators, too, who at the moment cannot win a hockey game. We'll get into all that coming up next. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan this Sunday for coverage of the South Point 400. Coverage will begin at 12:30. Race set to start at 1:30. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at thegamenashville.com. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you on this Friday morning. And as we do every Friday morning at 7 o'clock, we welcome in our good friend, Jared Stillman, to the program. Jared, good morning. How are you?
I'm super. How are you guys?
Super as well. Appreciate you taking time to be with us. Before we get into the Titans, I do want to get your thoughts on the hockey team. They're 0-4. They lose last night to Edmonton. They do still have 78 games remaining. How concerned are you by the start for the Nashville Predators?
I mean, I don't like it. I mean, I hate to say it, but I don't like it. I mean, it's not something I anticipated. You know, I did not expect them to win yesterday because they never beat Edmonton when they play at home. And so I wasn't super surprised about it. And I wasn't totally upset with the way they played. You know, I mean, I made it a point last night not to socialize during the second period because my seats are by the goal that Edmonton shoots at in the second period. And I wanted to watch Edmonton, shoot at that goal McDavid had last night was unbelievable. So like that's going to happen.
Stupid good.
I mean, it's going to happen when you play Edmonton, especially when you play them in the building. The fact that it wasn't 8-1 was probably a good sign from what we're used to. That being said, they're 0-4, and it just doesn't seem like the Predators have a lot of – they just don't seem to have a lot of pop right now. You know, it's like I'm watching the power play, and there's too much passing, not enough movement, not enough – like, then they connect on a pass, but it's not totally crisp. So then, Stamkos or whoever has to adjust to it on the tape. And now all of a sudden the opportunity to score is gone. So I think they're kind of sluggish. Again, it's 0-4, but I am worried if they don't win Saturday and then the Bruins come in here Tuesday, they could be 0-6. And then you've got real problems. So I don't like it. And I do wonder if maybe there needs to be a call up and, maybe a little bit of a change in the room, or just something, but it's not a good start.
I feel like you're way too measured on the Preds. I think you should keep the same energy as you have with the Titans, which is fire everyone.
Well, if the Predators were awful last year and the Predators were a third into the season, then we'd be having this discussion. I mean, if the Predators had a goalie that had a save percentage of 7.57, then we'd be having another conversation. And right now, that's what the Titans quarterback is. So I don't think the two are comparable, but the text line loves to do this. The text line, the YouTube chat, because the YouTube chat is as reckless as it gets, even more so than the text line. But the YouTube chat during my show loves to say, you don't criticize Barry Trotz and the Predators the way that you criticize the Titans. And I'm like, yeah, because Barry Trotz wins. And Barry Trotz is accountable. Well, right now, Barry's going to be on the show on Tuesday. Well, for their sake, they get a win on Saturday. But it's not like we're going to sit down with Barry and say, it's a good thing that you're 0-4, because that's what Brian Callahan would do, the way that he's been handling some of the things that are clearly not good with the Titans. So I don't think they're comparable. And I'd like to say that because if the Predators bomb this year, then it is going to be a big deal around here. It is going to be a problem. And Barry's going to be facing a lot of heat because with the way the contracts are signed, if they bomb, and I don't think they're going to, but if they do, then there's really not a lot of wiggling out of this. So that's going to be a problem. At least with the Titans, they know, hey, we get rid of the quarterback, it'll all be okay. But with the Predators, they don't have that. So again, nobody gets in trouble for something they haven't done. And I don't think the Predators are going to be bad, but the Predators are not comparable to the Titans, at least not yet.
So we gave our percentages the other day, me, Rexrode, and Kuharski, of the chances that Carthon and or Brinker could be fired at the end of the year. I think Rexrode was at 3, Kuharski was at 6, and I was at 25. Where is your percentage right now if things continue on this path?
94.
I think it's more likely than not that Rand gets fired at the end of the year. Chad Brinker becomes the guy that everybody then knows is in charge of the football operations, because I think that is kind of what Amy wants. And she just didn't do it because after last year, because she didn't want to fire Rand after one season. And so, again, maybe that's a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, Joe. I don't know. But I think that's probably more likely
You have
than
so
not.
many.
I think the Titans, I think the guys that run the Titans don't have a clue. And that includes Brinker and that includes Carthon. And even yesterday, the John Glennon tweet got me triggered when I saw that, oh, by the way, Elijah Molden, who they felt comfortable trading because they had signed Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs, Elijah Molden has 2 interceptions and a forced fumble and 2 pass breakups and is now starting for the Chargers. And I'm like, how does this happen? How does every single player that leaves the Titans go somewhere else and play better? From the best player on the team, Derrick Henry, who's gone to the Ravens and has played better than he was playing with the Titans, or the worst player on the team, Malik Willis, who has gone from the Titans and has played better than he ever played with the Titans in Green Bay. How does this keep happening? And so, between that and the fact that, again, I mean, they're staring 1-6 in the face and they're trying to sell PSLs. I mean, I don't think Amy can just say, hey, we knew this year was going to be a rebuilding year when it wasn't. But ultimately, I think what she's been doing and what I think she's going to continue to do until they completely reset the whole thing, which they should have done after last year, is it's going to keep being one person every year. And you're going to keep having these disjointed relationships between coach and GM and quarterback. And I don't think that's conducive for success, but that's their business. So that's probably what they'll do this year.
So, okay. So you think, fire Rand, keep Chad. So do you think that Rand is doing things that are like outside of what Chad wants? Like, is Rand going rogue? Is that what you think is happening? I'm just fascinated by this. No? Okay.
No, I'm talking about what Amy's going to do.
Well, I understand, but I mean, I agree with you on the idea of continuing to okay, you're with him, and now we're gonna take this, and now this, and now we're gonna you shouldn't do that. You should either, at this point, move on from an entire thing, or in my estimation, maybe give them more than 5 minutes to do their job. This team that everybody thought was going to stink stinks, and so now you think they should be fired. But I'm just trying to figure out why. Stink. But see, you say that, but when were they out there telling everybody we are going to be great this year? I mean, of course they're like, we want to be competitive. They went out and signed players, but have
you heard the Sunshine Pump video?
I did hear the Sunshine. I did hear the Sunshine Pump video, but in that video, I did not hear these promises that this was a playoff team. I mean, it was like, well,
that in the NFL.
Well, okay,
but that's what you're saying. Not going to promise they're going to make the playoffs, Joe. Every coach knows you don't go in there and say, we're going to win 10 games this year. Nobody does that. But Brian Callahan's sitting down on the bus being like, look, we're not in the prediction business, guys. And this is why coaches don't say things like this, because he says something, that's 85% of that. And here we are still talking about it. But he's sitting down with Taylor Lewan saying, hey, I think we're going to be pretty good. And I think we've made a lot of good additions. And I think that Will Levis is great. And that's why I took the job. And so I think we're going to be pretty good this year. And the answer to that is no.
Oh, my God. What a
Rand
crime.
Carthon saying
fire everyone. It's a crime.
So well, I mean, again, you're saying that the Titans didn't sit there and dog whistle to everybody that they were going to be competitive this year. And they did.
Dog whistle.
I mean, they simply did. Rand Carthon on a SiriusXM interview, which he did while practice was going on, which is another thing that is beyond me. But Rand Carthon said, we got everything on our wish list from the number one starter to the farthest backup when talking about the offense. And so the projection from the Titans was, hey, we spent all this money, which I think it's overblown. They're 22nd in payroll. But we spent all this money, fans. We're going to be good this year. We're going to compete this year. And they simply have not done that. And if you're rebuilding, which is what everyone's going to say now, is, well, we knew this was a rebuild, which is not true. But if you say that, well, then why are you trading third-round picks for L'Jarius Sneed if you're rebuilding? So, again,
I'm not saying that.
I think it's all a farce. And I think that ultimately the reason why Rand's going to be the one that ends up biting the bullet on this is because I think Amy kind of wanted to get rid of Rand after last year. That's why they essentially demoted him by putting Chad above him while they technically promoted him. And now Kaharski's all over the Chad Brinker praise all the time.
Wow. Is that a shot at Kuharski? I like it. Need more of that on the program here.
So you're saying Kaharski's a Brinker homer now?
We're not allowed. Oh, yeah. We're not allowed to blame. So he said we're not allowed to blame Chad Brinker at all, because nobody knows what Chad Brinker does. Nobody knows who reports to who. Nobody knows. And this just happened to come right after his 45-minute sit down with Brinker on analytics.
Oh, boy.
Yes.
And Kaharski,
Inspector Jared on the case.
So there's two things about Kaharski on this. Number one, when Diana Rossini said, see, Joe called me a tinfoil hattist for saying that Chad Brinker was in charge of the Titans. Then Diana Rossini reported that Chad Brinker was in charge of the Titans. And Joe was like, well, if Diana says it, it must be true. Even though
you make up so many things. You make up so many things.
Your tone on the Chad Brinker Rand Carthon situation
you are so
completely changed as soon as Diana Rossini said that, and you know it.
you and I no, you're just a liar. I mean, seriously.
What am I lying about?
That is not true. It's just like yesterday when you said on the air, and I'm like, "What are you? What did you say?" I said,
"Hold on, Robbie. I want you in on this. Hold on, Joe. Robbie, I want you in on this because Joe yesterday fired off some just angry text messages to the point that Ian said to me, because it was to both Ian and I. Ian goes, "Joe's mad about something." Because they were so long of text that Ian didn't even bother to read it.
I need Ian to I know you're not going to be honest about this stuff, so that's why I need Ian to be the adult in the room.
So here's in Jared versus Joe was asked the question. We were asked the question, who is the better GM? John Robinson or Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker, whatever.
Right.
And Joe said John Robinson, which is the correct answer, by the way.
Yes.
Joe said John Robinson. But then I said, so Joe even said in the same time that John Robinson is better than Rand Carthon and crew, but Joe says Amy can't.
The question was, who would you pick to be your GM?
Okay, whatever. And so
we don't need facts.
Joe. I mean, the semantics there, Joe. The hair splitting is come on now.
So what are we getting to here?
So Joe then said in the same breath that Amy can't fire the GM or the crew or whatever because it would look so bad if she did it. So now we have to go let them use the number one pick on the next quarterback. And
that's why she won't do it, Jared. This is where you lied. No, I think that she's less likely to do it because of how it looks. That's not why she shouldn't do it. She shouldn't do it because you're supposed to do your homework when you hire a front office. And you're supposed to have an idea of what they do. Oh, okay, you know that. And so if you believe in what they're doing on a daily basis and you see their vision, then no, you don't fire them after a year together. That's why.
I mean, I would assume that you don't fire coaches who get you to the playoffs for the first time in a decade and win a playoff game for the first time in 15 years.
Sure, that's fine.
But that doesn't work in Titanland.
No, let's all the wrongs making a right. That's Jared's plan. Let's keep doing all the wrongs.
Well, everything you guys are talking about right now is why I think the percentage chances that you and Kuharski threw out the other day are just wildly too low when it comes to anything this franchise does.
Yeah, you may be right. I mean, last year it was 0. I had 0% on Vrabel being fired, so maybe I'm wrong. But Jared's still lying about what I said. That's usual.
Not true, Robbie. You've been a part of this the whole week.
I just explained
he keeps saying
you lied.
Joe, you've said it since the day I said at the end of in the middle of last year, like around Thanksgiving. I said, if I own the team on Black Monday, I'm firing everybody. We're starting over. We're getting an experienced general manager. He's going to pick his coach. He decides what we do at quarterback. And you said they would be so stupid to fire a GM after 1 year. And now you're saying if Amy fires them, they'll be so stupid. You're pre-finger wagging the idea of firing the general manager. And now because you realize how stupid it is after you said that John Robinson was better than these guys, now you're walking your comments back.
I mean, that is one of the worst concoctions of word salad I've ever heard. Get out of here.
Robbie, you've been doing this all week with Joe talking about this.
I'm done with you. I'm done with you.
With 3% Joe or 6% Joe, whichever one he was. 3% Joe. You've been doing this with 3% Joe. Has Joe not been pre-shaming Amy about firing the GM if that's what it comes to?
It would be embarrassing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robbie.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
But again,
thank you, Jared.
But it's not what you said. So get out of here. God.
That's exactly what I said.
No, it is not. Just bye.
Okay.
We'll talk to you later, Jared. We'll see you later. All righty. Jared Stillman, our guest, joins us every Friday morning at 7 o'clock. We will get into the Titans and continue somewhat of this discussion coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. We are broadcasting live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Friday morning. We'll have the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up at 7:45. TD will be with us at 8. We'll look ahead to the Titans and the Bills coming up with him. Joe, I'm reading the grid right now, and the title is Objectively Assessing This Front Office, which Jared can't do. I'm looking forward to this discussion. Well said by you.
Well, first of all, this is what Jared does, and it's just infuriating, and it's not necessary. And yes, I'm driving. I'm listening to him yesterday, and he says, well, Joe says they shouldn't fire him because it looks bad. And so I actually pulled my car. I want you to know, I didn't just text and drive. I pulled my car over, and I said, that's not what I said, doofus. And then we went back and forth. And yes, I tagged in. Again, though, how it looks is why I think that's why I think the percentage is low. Okay. But the reason you don't fire them is because you have done your homework. You do believe in what they're doing. And because it is early. I mean, seriously, Kyle Tucker, man. Kyle Tucker is, I just got to read some Kyle Tucker on my personal text line. First of all, added to the list of things Stillman doesn't know what a dog whistle is. Also, here's a great headline from Stilly. Titans coach fired after telling Bussin' with the boys, we might be pretty good, and then being bad instead in year one. Fire everyone. But a bit, separate the things. It's just, first of all, I don't know if he intentionally lies or if he can't listen. If he has no listening comprehension skills. But that's not what I said at all. Second, yeah, I don't. I mean, I really want your opinion on this. I mean, I think I've made it pretty clear. I'm not overly impressed. I absolutely disagree that the entire town's going to be like, well, it's just a rebuild. That's not true. They were trying to be competitive. Someone on the text line is like, they did lie to us. I'm like, well, listen, I don't think they lied to you about being competitive. It was Sean on the text line. I said they believe they would be good. They thought that for real, that maybe they still think they can be. They didn't think they'd have the worst quarterback play in the NFL through 5 weeks. I mean, there's a lot of things they thought were going to happen based on what they were seeing and the work they were doing, that things that haven't happened.
Yes. Now, to that point, that's why I need to see the way the rest of it plays out too this year, because if it remains this bad, then I think I'm a little bit more open to changes than probably you and Kuharski are. Because the reasoning for that is, and this goes back to a conversation we've had a lot with Charles too. Who's responsible for Levis, right? Who looked at Levis and said, yeah, that's our guy? Was it Carthon? Was it an ownership-driven pick, as we've discussed with Charles Robinson? And if so, what does that all mean? Because I do think, whatever process went into selecting Levis, it does make me a little hesitant about them picking the next quarterback. Now, you have Brian Callahan here now, who obviously was not here when Will Levis was selected. So I would hope that if it does come around to selecting another quarterback in the draft, that he's going to be pretty heavily involved in it, right? He is the offensive guy. He is the guy that's worked with quarterbacks. And I would hope, really, regardless of who is at fault for selecting Levis, if it doesn't end up working out last time, that you lean into Callahan a little bit more this time, given his expertise and the quarterbacks that he's worked with. So maybe it is just as simple as that. But the bottom line is, it is early. It has also been really bad. And a lot of the decisions that they've made have not been good ones. So I need to see how the rest of the year plays out. And I'm not saying that I would absolutely fire them at the end of the year, but I am a little bit more open to that than I think you and Kuharski are.
Yeah. Well, as far as the Levis thing, the only if anyone ever tries to sneak out through any reporter that it was actually Vrabel, now that's when someone's desperate and trying to because that's not it. But I mean, we've talked about the whole thing with Charles Robinson's reporting and TD's reporting, and they differ on that. I mean, to me, I think Amy. I mean, I think there was I don't think it was there were more than one. It was more than one person who was on board with it, and I'm not even saying Vrabel was arguing against it, But I'm just saying, I'm confident in saying it wasn't Vrabel driven. Okay. Yeah. However the conversation went with everybody else, I don't know. But yeah, look, they made the choice. I didn't hate the choice where it was in the draft, because obviously everybody thought he was going to be a first round pick. And right now it isn't working out. I mean, even that, to me, look, I think every GM should get at least one quarterback. And that's the thing is Robinson really never did get to. He inherited Marcus. Now he made one of maybe the best move he made in his entire tenure was the trade for Tannehill, right? But I also look. I do look at this whole thing, and this is all Amy's fault. It's the firing of Robinson in season, all this stuff, and then smashing Rand and Vrabel together, and then doing all like. I look at all that and I say, I think I'd like to see if this setup can work. And I don't agree that every decision has been bad. I mean, even L'Jarius Sneed, he just had a bad week last week, and he obviously doesn't practice much. Let's see how the season goes. I mean, I also at times
I agree with that
him and said he looks like a pretty good player still. Obviously, Awuzie hasn't been healthy. I mean, I think Murray was actually a pretty good pick. I mean, you can go through these picks, and if you're sitting here and saying every single thing they've done is bad and stupid, then you just want them gone. I don't think that that's a fair objective way to look at it. And some of these, like the last draft class, obviously isn't working out. Skoronski isn't working out, but again, that was also how much. Who was that? Who wanted that one? Was that Vrabel? Was that Rand? I don't know. The bottom line is, if you're going to keep doing this, how are you ever going to have any stability and chance to succeed? I think you have to let something go for a little bit and see how it goes.
I agree with that in general. I guess my question is, how long is a little bit? Like, if it remains this bad this year, this is year 2 for them. Like, everybody wants to act like this is year 1 for them. It's not. It's year 2 for Carthon and Brinker. So, how long is long enough? That would be my question.
Yeah. Well, look, at this league, it's not too long. I mean, certainly. I mean, next year, look, like Santa here is saying a good number of local journalists and radio talk show hosts told us they were going to be good too. Well, I don't know anybody who picked him to have a winning record this year in media. Do you?
I don't remember everyone.
I mean,
somebody may have gone 9-8. I don't know. I know I had him at 7-10. You had him at 8-9.
Yeah, and so look,
Which
I mean,
looks generous right now.
It does. I was the sunshine blower at 8-9 and not making the playoffs. So look, they are definitely worse than I thought they'd be. This happens. I'm sure everybody in Houston last year picked the Texans to also go 5-12 like the rest of the league did, and then they did what they did. I mean, of course, we're always going to be wrong a ton, right? How long is too long? I mean, I think I would give them next year. And look, they have already started. They have spent money. They are trying to be good now. I don't buy into the whole, it's just a rebuild. They're probably going to have to make a quarterback decision, and they're going to need to be competitive next year. And this is where the trade stuff is interesting, because if you're them, you probably, I don't know that I'd feel comfortable if I were them saying, actually, it is a rebuild. Let's load up on the picks. And that I would not, because I would think that Amy would be like, wait a minute. Now, last offseason, we were doing all this stuff to try to win now, and now you're doing that. Now, that would be a red flag if I were Amy Adams-Strunk.
We'll have more on this discussion coming up next. A lot more of your thoughts to get to as well on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Tune in to 102.5, 106.3 The Game tomorrow for Vanderbilt football. Commodores taking on Ball State. Pre-game beginning at 4:30 on 94.9 The Fan. Moving to 102.5 The Game following the Preds game. Vanderbilt football kicking off at 6 o'clock. Coverage also available on the 102.5 The Game app and at thegamenashville.com. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode. We'll have the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up here momentarily, taking your thoughts on the Titans. Rexrode's just laughing coming back again, so I don't know what's happening here.
All right. In fact, I'm going to retweet this right now. Well, first of all, did you see Dalton Connect scored 20 straight points for
I did see that.
For the Lakers? 35, 20 straight, 35 in a preseason game. But I mean, he's Josiah Johnson, King Josiah 54, probably the best follow on Twitter, right? Like a top 5 follow. Did you see what I just
Other than
retweeted?
you, yes.
Well, yeah. If you see what I just retweeted, he's got Dalton Connect walking into the Lakers rotation. He's got Napoleon Dynamite's older brother from the end of that movie. Oh, God.
Kip, stop eating all the chips.
Napoleon Dynamite's right up Keezer's alley. Keezer is all in to Napoleon Dynamite.
Great flick and underrated character. His older brother. Good stuff.
Chat with hot babes online all day.
Keezer knows the whole movie.
Wow.
How about that?
Good stuff.
I thought that'd be a little bit before your time.
Tis not.
Okay. All right. All right. Taking your thoughts on the Titans front office, 615-737-1025. Look, I mean, again, I'm still largely with you. Like the idea of them moving on after 2 years with the general manager, after you'd already fired the GM in the middle of the season, then you fired Vrabel and just everything that's gone on. I would like to see some stability for a while around here. Having said that, like my expectations, and I think the expectations of Titans fans are much higher and should be much higher than what we've seen from this group so far. And look, I know It's been, an off season where, they spent a lot of money, and for a lot of these guys, it's not working out. Like Ridley's not working out right now. Now Ridley's a good player. We've seen him be a good player in the league before. Snead has been a good player in the league before. He had a bad week last week. And, with him specifically, I'm still interested to see how the knee continues to hold up both throughout this year and as we move ahead. Because as we've talked about many times, you were the one that decided to go do it and give up the 3rd round pick. So I think there's still, more information to figure out there. And maybe, they're sitting here watching film together as an offense and going through each passing play. And with more games that go by, maybe it is just as simple as, you know what, we got the quarterback wrong. We had expectations for this quarterback that we thought he could live up to that he just couldn't. And it's time to switch course. And maybe they are equipped to go get the next guy. I'm just saying, like, if I'm Amy Adams Strunk viewing this situation right now, and this goes back to, it's a similar conversation to what we had last year, right? Like, what were the expectations heading into this year? Forget what she says publicly, because they're always going to say, we want to have a competitive team and all these things publicly. Like last year, we talked about, they did bring Ryan Tannehill back and they did bring Derrick Henry back. And while they, on one hand, were planning for the future with drafting Will Levis, they clearly felt like they could still win last year by bringing all those guys back. And then they didn't. Yes. And Mike Vrabel was fired and he paid the price for it at the end. So I would love to know, like, Amy Adams Strunk, what was her expectation coming into this year? They did go spend a lot of money and they did make a lot of commitments to some veteran players in the league. Did she believe and did they believe that they were legitimate contenders to get back into the playoffs this year? And if they end up being so far away from that, how does that impact the way that she views it? That's what I'm kind of leaving the door open for here.
Yeah. And look, again, like the whole Levis thing, if it's that simple as we continue to move forward too, and it's like, well, the defense, again, I think the defense being number 1 in the NFL, there's some fool's gold there, obviously, right? But it hasn't been bad. I mean, the defense is playing well enough for this not to be a 1-4 team, right? So if it continues to be as simple as just the guy behind center can't get it done, well, then that's also gets back to like choosing him, because I guess depending on her level of enthusiasm there, I mean, at some point, like, are you holding other people accountable or yourself accountable? And also, speaking of holding her accountable, which of course people can't do because people can't fire owners, all of this losing basically coincided with the ridiculous decision to fire a general manager in the middle of a season, which we said at the time was ridiculous and has never not been ridiculous. I mean, to me, yeah, the free agent signings of those moves, Snead is definitely a big one to track. That what else did they do? Well, Ridley. I mean, Ridley's a huge one too. I mean, and again, in both cases, I mean, I liked them at the time, right? Now with some, okay, what is the deal with Snead's knees? But certainly like the Ridley pick. Right now, that's just going terribly. How much of that is just Levis? That's one of the questions. But I still think ultimately John Robinson, one horrific trade, and that was the worst movie made. But basically John Robinson's tenure ended because of his drafting. His drafting, starting with the COVID draft of 2020, nosedived. So let's quickly. Well, I think I carry this over to the rant. I think I can carry this over the rant. What I was going to break down.
Let's quickly go to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Chad to the program. Chad, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, just piggybacking kind of on what you're talking about here, I just feel like there's some really mismanagement, really from the top down, and it's just like pick a subject, right? I feel like with Levis, you drafted a quarterback in the second round, and then you throw him out there. Look at what's going on with Sam Darnold. He got thrown out there so quick, and now 3-4 years later, he's a player. Maybe Will's a player, but you're not going to know in 3 or 4 years. And you got a guy out there now who's not ready to play. It's as clear as day. And it's a quarterback league. If your quarterback can't play, I don't care what the rest of your roster looks like. You're not going to be good. And that's really what's going on. And the coach, I don't think this is the top. I don't think this guy is ready to coach in the NFL, to be honest with you. The decision, he's an offensive-minded coach, and he's afraid to go for it on fourth down, where every analytics in the country says you go for it. Just across the board, mismanagement. And I mean, just pick any of those, and I can go all day. So I'll hang up and listen. Your call.
Yep. Thanks for the call, Chad. Appreciate it. I mean, the other part of this too, though, the organizational philosophy on this last year, Joe, they fired Vrabel, and Amy Adams Strunk comes out with her statement. And in part of the statement, she's talking about, we have an exciting young quarterback that we're going to build things around. So clearly she was all in on Levis,
of course,
regardless of where that came from. And we've talked about, there is a difference between the way that he played last year and the way that he's played so far this year. But I mean, it was an organizational thing that they were all in on this guy, and we're 5 games into the next season, and he just looks like a lost cause at this point.
No, look, and that's the thing, right? Like the entire just the obsession of this league, really of American pro sports, is finding that quarterback. And when you do, it can elevate things beyond what they should be. And you see that in Kansas City, I think, still more than anywhere. And if it's the other side of that, it can destroy a lot of things. And a lot of things can become worse as a result of not getting it right at that position.
We'll have the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment. Let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robby and Rexrode.
I mean, like, tough year for Nashville SC. Like, Vanderbilt is Nashville, or Obi-Wan, you're our only hope. I mean, that is one of the worst concoctions of word salad I've ever heard. Get out of here.
Robbie, you've been doing this
Just
all
get
week
out of
with
here.
Joe talking
Seriously,
about this.
I'm done with you. I'm done with you.
With 3%
Get
Joe
out,
or 6% Joe, whichever one he was.
He's
3% Joe. You've been doing this with 3% Joe. Has Joe not been pre-shaming Amy about firing the GM if that's what it comes to?
It is that time of the day, time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode. You can check it out every morning here on the program. Joseph, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I had a few possibilities today, but one thing I'd like to say real fast. Hey, Stilly, get out of our text line. Don't you text our listeners. You text our listeners when it's your show. Now, granted, to be fair, I do that to him all the time. And for Jared versus Joe, some of his dog butt flea lovers get down there, and I'm just like, all right, I just have to get in there and mix it up with you folks.
Dog butt flea lovers.
All right. Well, I said that wrong. Like, the Jared, oh my God. I don't mean that the lovers of the dog
constantly.
You know what I mean. You know what I mean. But I want to, and I also, I considered today a rant on being the father of my baby daughter who now is going to dances, but I'm just not even going to get into that. Let's go to the draft classes. This is this is, to me, it's not everything, because obviously free agent signings are huge too, and those are critical. But when it comes down to it, John Robinson lost his job because this was bad. So let's go through the whole thing and remind everybody what. Again, I agree with you. This is year 2 for Rand Carthon, whatever the role was, and his first draft, you had Ryan Cowden in there, and you had Vrabel, and now it's totally different. But still, that's fine. 2 years. It is a 2-year judgment of the front office. So Skoronski, Levis, Tyjae Spears, Josh Wiley, Jalen Duncan, Colton Dowell. I mean, generally you get to 6 and 7, and to me, it's like gravy if you hit on anything. Spears, I like, and he's a good player. I mean, I know that's another, like Jared, that was another knock on them. I'm like, well, man, he's a pretty good player. He's not a great player. He's the second best back in this team, but I don't hate that pick. And Wiley, I think, is a fine player. It's Skoronski and Levis, right? As we've talked about a million times. This draft, J.C. Latham, Tavondre Sweat, Cedric Gray, who, look, he's been hurt. I mean, I think he's an important thing at some point. Like, is he a player? Can he play? Jarvis Brownlee, that's a 5th-round pick that, I mean, in terms of value, I think right now
looks pretty good.
Although Latham, and that's the thing, you especially have to hit on your first-round picks. And Latham looks pretty good. Jaquan Jackson, then you have James Williams and Jalen Harrell. And, look, during camp, of course, we were talking about Jalen Harrell, and now we don't see him, but those are 7th-round picks. That, to me, and I'm not saying, well, let's wait until year 4, and then we'll be able to tell you, but that's the bottom line. And so you talk about timeline, Robbie. To me, obviously we're going to see how this season goes. I think Snead and Ridley are both very important factors in this discussion, without question. Yep. And then you're going to have a draft class, and in this league, your high picks have to matter. This team obviously isn't very good. They haven't seen a lot of help. So that, to me, is the timeline. It's you have to make a quarterback decision probably. So is that next year super high pick, you're picking a quarterback? Even if so, look, I mean, fair or not, if a lot of other things that you're doing are not working out, then you may be picking a quarterback for the next guy to take over, just like draft class and how it looks and how they look in this team and all that. To me, that has to be part of the evaluation. Once you get to that, you get to next year. If all these things, all these other things, the other free agent signings of the next offseason, all that stuff, if it's looking bad, then sure. That's how I look at the timeline.
I don't have any problem with anything that you just said there. The one thing that I will say is you bring up John Robinson and, talk about the drafting is ultimately why he got fired. My response to that would be it's a good point, and I think it makes a lot of sense when you look at it. But she did give him a contract extension a few months before she fired him. So she clearly didn't have that big of a problem with the drafting a few months before she fired him because she gave him the contract extension and then he traded AJ Brown. Like, to me,
Sure.
To me, that's why he got fired. It was the AJ Brown trade, and it was the timing of when he got fired was 2 days after the Philly game when AJ Brown lit him up.
Right.
And they can dance around that all they want. You'll never convince me that AJ Brown isn't the reason that John Robinson got fired.
Yeah, and I'm not arguing with that. What I guess what I'm saying though is that the drafting is the biggest reason they went downhill, and the AJ trade too. Like, so for example, so when she gave him the extension at that point, you're still absolutely hoping Caleb Farley's good, right?
Right.
But so there's a lot of things.
I guess my point
yet.
is that she felt one way about it enough to give him a contract extension, and then less than a calendar year later, it changed on a dime. And that's who we're dealing with here.
Oh, no question. No, I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, it's that just all over the place decision making is where everything starts for the issues of this franchise.
Yes.
And so to your point, you may be right. Maybe it just continues. I feel pretty confident in saying that Amy Adams Strunk has not enjoyed the criticism she's gotten from some corners of the world.
Probably not.
And that's where I think it will. And I think it's probably a good thing because I think you have to see some things through. I'm sorry, Stilly, but you can't keep firing people. But maybe it's a bad thing. Maybe this is a terrible front office and it's just delaying the inevitable. But I just think that because of all that has gone on, that she will be hesitant to do it after this year. We'll see. Again, I've been wrong on. Certainly wrong. Way wrong on Vrabel. Way wrong.
615-737-1025, our phone number. Titans and Bills coming up on Sunday. We'll talk to TD coming next, get his thoughts on all things Titans and that matchup as well. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
ESPN's Teron Davenport talking Titans now on Robby and Rexrode on ESPN 102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
It is that time of the week here on Robby and Rexrode. We go to our 102.5 The Game phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com and welcome in our friend Teron Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter, host of Talking with TD. TD, good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning. What's going on?
Not a whole lot, man. Appreciate you taking time to be with us. TD, on the Levis front, it was interesting to hear Nick Holtz talk a little bit yesterday. And, you know, he brought up the second play of the game and the ball that should have gone to Ridley. And, you know, people have been pointing out all week some opportunities maybe that were there in the passing game down the field that Levis just did not go to. I guess, how surprised are you that he's not seeing some of these things, and how fixable do you think that problem is at this point in a season?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really surprised by it because that's something that he showed that he had really had a penchant on doing, right? Taking those deep shots and going down the field. And it was like, hey, man, sometimes you got to get off of those and look at what's underneath. And he didn't do that. So, yeah, it's a surprise. I think, you know, it's a little tough to fix right now because there's just so much going on. And he's thinking, okay, like if I bypass these two reads and take the shot, what if I get sacked? Or wait a minute, what if I take the shot and bypass these two reads? And it's just like a circle of things going on. And it's tough to play any sport when you got so much going on in your mind.
Yeah, so confidence, TD. I mean, I think that's been one of the themes here. I feel like, you know, like publicly, Brian Callahan, I think, is trying to keep it high. And Levis has said this week, you know, it's not an issue, but I mean, it looks like it is. How do you fix that? I mean, to me, it's like you need to just make some plays and build on that. But other than that, like when you have a player in this situation with all the attention, as we know, all the attention is on these quarterbacks, and there's so much at stake. You know, how do you deal with that? How do you fix confidence? And also, what did you think of the whole team? You know, kind of picking through the pass plays and judging them that way.
Yeah, I don't think his confidence is an issue. I think it's more like conviction. Like he's saying that he is just throwing where he thinks the ball should go, but he really isn't sure where the ball should go. I mean, I think that's the bottom line. I think he remains confident, but I go back to the comments he had post game, you know, where he was talking about the battle that he has every snap about bypassing the first and second read to take a shot down the field or vice versa. You know, that to me is a lack of conviction, not confidence. But as far as the meeting with everybody, it's funny. You know, DeAndre Hopkins he's something else, right? Like he is never bothered by anything, and I love that. But he just has a way. If he doesn't want to answer your question, he's not going to answer it. And I asked him like 3 or 4 different ways and made attempts to try to figure out, okay, is that something that is different for you guys to do? You know, sitting down as a group and watching the plays like that. I think it's good for accountability and to make sure everybody knows the message that's being delivered. You know, as receivers and quarterbacks, they tend to watch games together regardless, but now you got your offensive lineman like, hey, man, you know, if I block this correctly, look what could happen if he makes the right read and so on and so forth. So I think it's good from that perspective.
So, TD, you bring up Hopkins, and, you know, part of the questioning for him yesterday was, of course, about, you know, the trade rumors and all that. And he handled it the way that DeAndre Hopkins handles everything. And it was really good. But my question for you is, if this goes the way we think it's going to go with Buffalo and Detroit coming up next, and they're at 1-6, do you think a trade of DeAndre Hopkins is coming? Do you think it should be coming? How do you view that from the Titans' perspective?
Yeah, I say no to both of those questions. I think they do need to keep DeAndre Hopkins. I'm not sure what you could get. Maybe a 5th-round pick. Okay, that's cool. I mean, they've turned that into something. Look at Jarvis Bradley Jr., but I don't think they should trade him. I think they have to continue to plug away in year one for Callahan, right, to 8 games in, throwing a towel. I don't know that that's a good message, right, to send to the locker room. So I think they need to keep him and try to work it out and end the year, these last 12 games or so, end the year on a good note and use that to lead into next year.
So TD, this defense, I mean, it's number one in the NFL. I mean, to me, if the Titans are going to win football games, obviously you hope that all of a sudden Levis stumbles into a 20 for 25, 303 touchdown day. But yeah, they're going to have to win low scoring games, right? I mean, you're going to have to lean on this defense. They're technically ranked number one. They're not turning people over. Snead, gave up some big plays in the last game, so there's a lot of focus on him. But where do you think overall is this defense up to dealing with Josh Allen and now Amari Cooper, and then the next week all the stuff the Lions have going on? Can they make those games competitive?
That's the challenge, right? These are the two best offenses they'll probably face all year, absolutely up to this point. So all of the passing yards allowed, number one in the league, and all of the, doing well against the run and so on and so forth. Yeah, it's going to be tested. And I think when you look at Josh Allen, I mean, this guy, he's playing at an outstanding clip. And guess what? He's not turning the football over, something that he typically has done a lot in the past. So they're going to have their hands full. They got to figure some things out. Offense has to help them just the same as they have to help the offense. These 3 and outs and, turnovers and stuff, it doesn't help at all. So it's going to work hand in hand. It's going to be a tough issue for them to deal with the next couple of weeks. I don't think they come out of that still number one in pass defense, because these attacks are very explosive.
TD, it's been hard to be positive about the Titans, but I do want to have some shred of positivity here. I love Jarvis Brownlee Jr. I think he's awesome.
Yes.
And I think it's a heck of a pick for the Titans. Has he shown you enough to convince you that he can be a long-term starter for this team?
I think so. Yeah, I think without a doubt. He has that. There's a certain mindset you have to have as a cornerback, and he has it, right? Just that killer, that dog, he has it. But the thing that's really, really good about him is there's no cockiness or arrogance, right? He knows he's a good player, but he doesn't feel that he's so good of a player that he can't be coached, that he can't learn from someone older than him, right? And you just look at the way he's plastered himself to L'Jarius Sneed and become a sponge, and that's something that what better way than from one of the guys who right now may not as much be a top 5 corner, but has a resume that makes him a top 5 corner. So yeah, I think long term, he's someone that's he's going to be a starter. 29 should be on the field for them for years to come.
So I know the Colts not great up front, plus they're shredded by injuries. However, I think I saw an offensive line that is figuring some things out. Do you think this offensive line is improving? If so, I guess how much? And also, do you think Watson is going to be the guy here moving forward long term?
Yeah, I think Watson will probably be the guy moving forward long term. I think that should be the case because, I mean, look, man, the group, they gave up 0 sacks. I know he got penalized a few times, but, they played well for the most part. And I think, we're talking offensive line. Obviously, J.C. Latham, you got to mention him. Skoronski did a solid job. But, man, can we, give Dylan Rader some props? Because this dude has been assassinated by the fans and media for not playing well. And, I mean, now every time I'm turning on the end zone copy, he's pulling and he's murdering somebody. You know what I mean? You look at how he blocked that Colts outside backer. I mean, he ran right through his chest, and drove him to the ground. I think Dylan Raiders, and he's not allowing sacks, right? He's not getting penalized, which was a big issue last year. Dylan Raiders, to me, is a guy that if I'm Rand Carthon, I was starting to get in contact with Vin Marino and say, hey, man, run the numbers on this because I think he's someone that should be extended.
Yeah, he looks really good so far. No doubt about that.
Quite a turnaround.
Absolutely. TD, great stuff as always, man. Really appreciate you taking time to be with us and enjoy Buffalo. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, for sure. And before Buffalo, listen, man, no matter what, let's go Mets. I'm still cheering my team on tonight.
Hey,
right.
I'm sorry that didn't work out for you, TD, but you got to see an Ohtani homer and you still got to go to a game, right? I'm sure it was awesome.
Yeah. The homer was right to my left side too, man. If I'd have caught it, I'd have threw it back.
To see, that's how you know the TD's a real one. TD, thank you, sir. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, fellas. Yep.
Teron Davenport, our guest, joins us every Friday morning at 8 o'clock. We'll react to what TD had to say. We've got Pigskin Pick'em coming up at 8:30. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. I got some tickets to give away to see the Preds take on the Detroit Red Wings tomorrow at Bridgestone Arena. Nick Keyser is calling for caller number 10. Caller number 10, 615-737-1025. Caller number 10 will win a pair of tickets to see the Preds take on the Red Wings tomorrow at Bridgestone Arena. And who knows, you could be in the house for win number 1 for the Predators on the season. They need it tomorrow. We'll get back into them a little bit later to close out the show. But 0-4, not where you want to be right now for the Nashville Predators. Taking your thoughts at 615-737-1025, our phone number. Joe, I got a text from Stilly. He says Jarvis Brownlee is a backup. What do you make of Jarvis Brownlee, the way that he's played? Has he proven to you that he could be a starter for this team long term? Do you need to see more? How do you view the Jarvis Brownlee situation?
Like every single thing, Stilly has to just. I mean, again, I would still prefer everything sucks all the time to everything's awesome all the time. I would, okay, but no, I think he looks like a good player. I mean, I don't know if TD's right that he's definitely gonna be a starter for a long time, but Stilly's like, I mean, the other day I'm talking to Stilly and I mentioned Brownlee and he's like, he brings up LaShawn Sims, who who at no point in my mind when he was a Titan did I think he was anything but a backup, like a solid late round backup. I think Brownlee is better than that. Brownlee, the question with Brownlee, I think he would have been a higher pick, but the question is health, and that's still the question, right?
Yeah,
in his career. But as a player, no, I think he's a starting quality player.
I agree. I think
far be it for me to, go ahead.
No, I've been really impressed with what I've seen from him. I mean, health is the thing. And I mean, look, a Woozy can't get on the field, so I don't really know what to make of him at this point. He's just been hurt the whole time. So I know that he's been a good player in Cincinnati. Hopefully we see him again here at some point and we can make a determination that way. By the way, injury report out for the Titans with the matchup against the Bills coming up this weekend. And it's not great, Joe. Obviously, Levis is still on it with the shoulder, but I mean, I'm sure that he will be playing coming up. But Devondre Sweat on the injury report yesterday. So he wasn't on it Wednesday, is on it yesterday with a knee injury and did not practice. So we'll see what that looks like. But Sweat on the injury report. Obviously, Kenneth Murray has been on it with rest. So they've kind of gone with the rest days. Still no practicing from Tajay Spears with a hamstring injury. So Ernest Jones has been a limited participant yesterday dealing with an illness this week. But Sweat popping up yesterday on the injury report, not great heading into this matchup.
No, not at all. And it's also depending on how this season goes. And we saw it kind of last year. It's like once it starts going real south, some of those injury reports tend to get a little bigger. Now I understand the Titans had big injury reports the last few years, regardless, right? But
Buffalo's is pretty large.
Is it? Yeah. Well, and they're still good. So
they are.
So there you go.
Hey, you'll be happy to know that for Buffalo, Darrington Evans, a full participant the last 2 days, dealing with a hamstring injury. The revenge game is coming.
And the hamstring, that's a familiar.
Saw that a few times.
Yeah, we did see that a few times. PK mentioned the other day on the injury front. He's right that it has been better, but I also I tend to agree. Again, I agree with most things with PK, except when I don't. But I do also think it's largely just luck. I mean, I understand that you have to vet everything, look at everything. I mean, actually, at what point are we going to get back to? Well, I don't know. Are we figuring out that the Titans trainers are now good? Are they good now? Are they doing their jobs now?
They got the AI model. They're fine.
Oh, is
the
that
Chad
what it
Brinkers
is?
AI has come in, and now they can stop some of these things.
Okay, that's what it is. I didn't realize I hadn't thought about analytics assisting the doctors.
Yeah,
yeah, that's pretty cool.
Vrabel should have leaned into that a little bit more.
4th and 3, what should I do? Or this ligament looks torn. What should I do, analytics guy? You pipe in from the thing.
Need like an iRobot Titans version. Vrabel just over there consulting the robot as to what to do with the injuries.
Speaking of Vrabel, there's a lot of fan bases out there.
Yeah,
talking about Vrabel. Actually, I saw Bill Simmons say that the Jets should just, once they fired Saleh, just like why aren't you going after Belichick or Vrabel right now? And I don't necessarily disagree. He's going to get a job this cycle for sure. Maybe he gets. Does he possibly supplant Stefanski?
Maybe. I mean, that could be. Does he want to sign up for that though? Like, are they going with Deshaun again next year? Because that would be my question. Like, if we're going with Deshaun next year, you can count me out. I know you guys are giving him this contract and all that stuff, but you can count me out if that's your plan at quarterback for next year.
Well, if you look at the cap situation with Deshaun, that'll be a good example of how the cap does actually exist and does actually impact teams, because if they're not, then their hands are going to be tied. It's just the reality of what it is. So, that's a great question. But either way, it's not a favorable job at all. Not to mention that it's just the Cleveland Browns, and they are what they are for a long time.
Well, good for Vrabel. The Browns job could be open. The Jets job is open. Nice, stable, functional, reliable organizations that he might have a chance to choose from coming up.
Well, I let me circle
Cowboys.
back to. Well, there is that.
Jerry in there.
There is that, yeah. But let me circle back to a very well received column from 2 years ago that I wrote. Look, Ryan Day. The thing is, Ryan Day is going to beat Michigan this year because Michigan sucks. But Ryan Day, like, if they don't do something special this year, and they totally should have won at Oregon, and they didn't. I'm telling you, man, I still absolutely believe that is a real thing, a potentially real thing. It's just a matter of, again, it's Vrabel. Does he want to deal with all the things you have to deal with as a college coach? But you do not take that off the table for him. And if it's that, as opposed to some of these dysfunctional organizations as his only choices in the NFL, chance to go home, I don't.
What if they lose to Penn State and don't end up making the playoff? That'd be something.
That's an interesting thing. So if they lose to Penn State, 2 losses, and what would their best wins be?
I don't know. That's a good question.
No, they really – is that Penn State game on the road?
Let's see here.
Because if it is, there's a real chance they lose it. I don't think Penn State's very good, but Penn State does. That's the one thing, Penn State has gotten them a couple times in the Franklin era. If that plays out that way, I think he's fired. I think he's fired.
They got a sneaky one. They got Indiana the week before the Michigan game too. That could be sneaky.
Could be, but it's at home.
That is correct.
So like if they were going to Bloomington, then I could buy that. But yeah, if they lose to Penn State, then I don't like what's their best win?
They don't have a good one. I mean, yeah, I guess it would end up being Indiana later in the season.
Like that's they would if they got in and lost to Penn State, they would get in because their name is Ohio State. I mean, really, that's it. So Braves, it's finally going to come true. Called shot.
Braves to Ohio State. 615-737-1025. Our phone number. We'll have Pigskin Pick'em coming up next. The Vols in Alabama. Vanderbilt taking on Ball State. The Titans in action against the Bills. We'll get to all that and more. This is Robby and Rexrode. 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Now, it's time for Pigskin Pick'em with Robby and Rexrode on ESPN, 1025 The Game, and the Game Nashville app.
It is time for Pigskin Pick'em here on the program. Tennessee taking on Alabama, the third Saturday in October. Vanderbilt hosting Ball State. Titans in action on the road against the Buffalo Bills. We'll get to all of those games and more. But first, a standings update in the competition. Joe Rexrode, how are we doing in the competition?
Well, you guys did pick up some ground last week. We all went 3-3, but you both got your locks. I did not get my lock. So right now, I'm 26-16, 4-3 on my locks, 30 points. Nick, 21-21, 5-2 on the locks, 26 points. Robby, 22-20, better than Nick, but 2-5 on the locks, 24 points. And that's a pretty good competition here, folks.
Not a bad competition at all. We begin with Ball State taking on Vanderbilt tomorrow. Joe Rexrode, you're up first. You were in first place in the competition. Vanderbilt, a 26.5-point favorite on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Who you got in this one?
Yeah, give me Ball State. And the reason is I can't believe that Diego Pavia is feeling great after what happened to his leg last week at Kentucky. Limping around a lot, going in the tent. Been a little bit of, cloak and dagger this week. I don't know that means he doesn't play, but I think that's a possibility. And I also just think that even if he does play, I just think he's got to be limited to some extent. So I think Ball State will cover, but Vandy will still win comfortably.
Nick Keyser, Vanderbilt favored by 26.5 against Ball State.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same. Diego Pavia, not an encouraging sight to see last week, so give me Ball State in this one. Not to win, but to cover for sure.
You guys are haters. Vanderbilt, lock. I'm done being on the wrong side of Vanderbilt. Give me Vanderbilt minus the 26.5. They will win. They will win by 35 points. I'm locking down on Vanderbilt. You're welcome, Commodore fans.
Wow, you become a Vanderbilt homer. Look at what Diego Pavia has done.
I mean, how could you not love that guy? Vanderbilt, locking down. Minus the 26.5. The third Saturday in October, Alabama taking on Tennessee at Neyland Stadium. Huge game coming up tomorrow. Alabama has moved up to a 3.5-point favorite in this game. It's been 2.5 for most of the week. Now a 3.5-point favorite on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Nick Keyser, Alabama and Tennessee.
Just not encouraged by last week whatsoever. So give me Bama in this one.
Joe, I've had a feeling all week. Tennessee's winning the game. The Vols are going to win tomorrow. I think I would take Tennessee plus the 3.5. I think they win a close one. So I'll go Vols outright and plus the 3.5. Joe Rexrode, Bama, favored by 3.5.
Won't shock me. This game is a fascinating game, and I could see it going a lot of different ways other than a total shootout, which, of course, means it will, right, because I don't see that happening. But I'm going Bama. I think Bama wins by a touchdown, so I will give those points. I think ultimately Milroe versus Iamaleava is the difference.
Rexrode and Keyser hate your teams, going with the opposition so far. The Bills taking on the Tennessee Titans. Bills favored by 8.5 in this game. Joe, I probably shouldn't have used my lock. Give me the Bills minus 8.5. I can't use my lock, but I feel great about it. I'll take the Bills by about 3 touchdowns in this game. Bills minus 8.5. Joe Rexrode, you're up next.
Yeah, close to a lock for me too. Definitely Bills. I have to see something that tells me the Titans are going to have any kind of a pulse on offense. In a game like this, you got to have a lot more offense than they've had so far.
Nick Keyser, Buffalo, favored by 8.5 points.
Make it a clean sweep. I'll be watching the Manning cast more than I usually do on Monday, but I want to hear how they want to break down the Titans. But yeah, give me the Bills.
Going with the Bills minus the 8.5, which means Rexrode and Keyser went against Vanderbilt, against Tennessee, and against the Titans. What are we doing here, boys?
WHTR.
Man.
That's wild. That's rare.
Just in fairness, neither one of you think Vanderbilt's
keeping it
actually
real.
Lose the game. Just going against the spread. It's all good. We move to the individual portion of the program. Joe Rexrode, your first individual selection.
It's a weird week for me. I've actually got 2 NFL and 1 college. We'll see if that's a good formula. But the 1 college, I'm all over this one. Oklahoma State at BYU minus 9. I like BYU a lot. Oklahoma State's a mess. BYU at home is tough. BYU, make it my lock.
Guaranteed. Locking down BYU minus 9 against Mike Gundy, his hair, and Oklahoma State. Nick Keyser, your first individual selection.
Yeah, sticking over in college for my first one. A team that has impressed and is in the top 25. Give me Army minus 15.5 over East Carolina this weekend. And I'm going to lock down on it because I feel damn good about Army and Navy being ranked. It's going to be one for the ages when they play later this year. But yeah, give me Army.
Give me your full breakdown of East Carolina.
I don't know much about it, man. I just feel good about Army.
There you go.
Purple
Nice.
unis.
Like
Jeff Blake played there.
He did. Give me the Detroit Lions plus 1.5 against the Minnesota Vikings, and give me the Detroit Lions to win the game outright, but give me for sure plus the 1.5. Lions all the way against the Vikings. Nick Keyser, your second individual selection.
I'm actually going against you in this one. Give me the Vikings over the Lions this weekend.
Well, with the Vikings minus the 1.5 against the Detroit Lions. Joe Rexrode, your second individual selection.
Well, I'm with Keyser on that one. Lions with no pass rushers against that mighty Sam Darnold. Woo, baby. About to be some reality for the Lions. All right, I'm going Dolphins at Colts. Colts are home and -3, which I know the Colts aren't great, but, man, Dolphins right now, yeah, give me the Colts.
Colts -3 against the Dolphins at home. That could be an atrocious football game. Looking forward to seeing what that ends up looking like. Give me the Oklahoma Sooners at home -1.5 against the South Carolina Gamecocks. South Carolina put together a nice fight against Alabama last week. I still like Oklahoma's defense, and I think they will give Sellers some fits in this game. So I'll go Oklahoma minus the 1.5 against South Carolina. Joe Rexrode, your final individual selection.
Well, this is a formula that's been working for me, and I'm not going to stray from it. Those beloved Carolina Panthers are at the Commanders. I am an absolute Jaden Daniels stan all the way. He's a Rookie of the Year lock, and he's an MVP candidate. The Commanders are -8 at home against the Panthers. Going to win by about 17. Give me the Commanders.
We're going Commanders -8 against the Carolina Panthers. Nick Keyser, your final individual selection.
Yes, mine and Robert's pick. Intern Robert and I had to agree on this one, but we want to see Texas take down Georgia this weekend. Texas -5 on the books this morning against the Bulldogs.
4.5.
Oh, 4.5.
You get even more.
Okay. We will still take that, but we feel good about the Longhorns.
They're going Texas -4.5 against Georgia. I know that because I have the same exact pick. Give me Texas -4.5 against Georgia. So I think Texas, this is just me, I think they are clearly the best team in the country. I think they're very, very good. I'll go Texas. I think Texas might win by double digits, but Texas -4.5.
You know, I would not. I'm so excited for that game. I can't touch it, though. I don't know. I'm with you. I think Texas is probably the best team, but I also don't think there's that much of a gap. You know, but you know, how is Georgia going to play? And I think Georgia at its best, this can be a great game, but obviously they can't have a first half like they had at Bama. But should be fascinating.
I'm hoping for just 2 electric games between Tennessee and Alabama and Texas, Georgia tomorrow. I mean, it could be, and I know, you know, we've talked about Tennessee, Alabama all week, and it's been dampened by the way that those two teams have played the last week. But I'm hoping for a great game there. It could be just back-to-back electric games, and I'm rooting for that tomorrow night.
Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate that, you know, the Bama Tennessee game has a different feel than it did just a couple weeks ago. Like it, but you know, there's probably more consequence on it now too, right?
Yeah.
So
I'd say so.
So yeah, no, I think it could be a tremendous doubleheader of SEC football. And you know, if Georgia loses to Texas, man, you know, Georgia with their schedule, they actually could be a 3-loss team that gets in, but I wouldn't want to mess around with that. By the way, you know, Nick mentioned Army Navy. Do you guys know the Army Navy game, of course, is after the playoff selection?
Yeah, which is wild to me.
But they right now are lined up to play each other the week before in the AAC title game, which of course would count for the playoff selections.
Right.
All of which is extremely bizarre. And to me, I think you got to change something around with this thing because that game should be included. It might be a critical piece of information for the playoff field.
Might be. 615-737-1025. Preds have fallen to 0-4. Tennessee taking on Alabama tomorrow. Titans on the road against the Bills. Our final thoughts on all that and a very big weekend in sports around here coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Tomorrow from 1 to 6 p.m., New Heights Brewing at 928 Representative John Lewis Way South is having an afternoon of free live music and good vibes before the Post Malone concert at Nissan Stadium, benefiting the relief efforts in East Tennessee presented by Cromwell Media. $1 from every draft pint will be donated to East Tennessee Foundation to help those in need from the devastation of Hurricane Helene. More details can be found at thegamenashville.com. events. Also, make sure that you check out 102.5 The Game, 106.3 The Game from and Joe Dubin from 11 a.m. to 1 tomorrow as well at Hope Fest 2024, a family-friendly festival celebrating hope found in the faith and recovery community. This event will be held at the Bethel Church of the Nazarene at 455 Broadmoor Drive in Nashville from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Free food, games for the kids, mental health and recovery resources are all available. The Tennessee Titans Alumni Association will be on hand with their vaccination clinic. You can find out more details as well on that at thegamenashville.com/events. Final thoughts today here on the program. Joe, I do want to pass along that former NFL quarterback and former Vanderbilt quarterback Jay Cutler has apparently been charged with DUI in Franklin. So that's coming out this morning. All the local news outlets around here reporting that, but a charge of DUI for Jay Cutler from obviously former Vanderbilt quarterback.
Yeah, highly disappointing from Jay Cutler. Makes no sense at all.
Yep. So just wanted to pass that along. That's making its rounds on social media this morning. Joe, we began the show with the Preds. They lose 4-2 last night to Edmonton. They dropped to 0-4 on the season. They've got Detroit coming up tomorrow, who, by the way, is 1-3. The one win they have is against the Nashville Predators. So two teams that are struggling out of the gate here. You know, I've said all week that a little bit of patience is probably going to be required for this team. Having said that, it's getting pretty close to deep concern for me. Like 0-4 is not where you want to be. You get to 0-5 and you got Boston coming in on Tuesday. That's not good. Like that is not a good situation, and that is a big hole that you've started to dig yourself at the beginning of the season. The Predators need to get a win tomorrow. And I said it earlier, like I'm less concerned with Stamkos and Marchessault. You know, Marchessault scored last night. It was a nice goal on the power play. Stamkos doesn't have a point yet, and I know he's getting some heat from some people on Preds Twitter, and I get it. He's getting paid a lot of money, and he's got to start putting the puck in the net. I like, for the most part, the looks that he's getting. I think the puck's going to go in for him at some point. But I also kind of expected early in the season, Joe, that for those two in particular, it could be a process of getting used to your new environment, finding out which lines work and all those things. What has been disappointing to me and what I think is becoming a big problem is the other guys who have been here and who have played together, they got to play better. Like Philip Forsberg, I know he's got 4 points in 4 games. He's not been very good. Like he's got to play better. He has not taken over games the way that we know that he can. Ryan O'Reilly's got to get better. He's got to get better in the faceoff circle. He wasn't good in the faceoff circle last night. Gus Nyquist has been largely invisible so far. And I don't think Roman Yossi's been very good. Like a lot of these guys that they relied on heavily last year have not gotten off to a great start this year. And that to me is more worrisome than anything else.
Well, look, the one thing that we figured is that they were going to keep that top line together. Also, it made sense that there'd be some regression and that maybe at some point you move things around. But that's what you should be able to count on early in a season when you have these new pieces and you have all the things that go with starting a season and trying to figure out, you know, different parts and how they work together. You know, those guys work together. You should be able to count on them. So to your point, it's disappointing that it's been a rough start, and that's part of this team's overall rough start. And I'm with you. I mean, you just got to – you need to get a win, get that under your belt, because the winless thing is that can really just become a problem. Just like a great winning streak, it's like you just know you're going to win, you know, for about 2 weeks or whatever it is, you know, in a sport like this where you play every third day. I mean, it starts getting desperate, and then you start pressing, and you just need to like go dominate a team that you are better than, because the Preds on paper are absolutely better than the Detroit Red Wings. You get that one win, and then I think, you know, then you resume tinkering, and you got a lot of things to figure out, but you get that out of the way. That has to happen as quickly as possible.
Well, they were 5-10 last year, and they dug out of it. You don't want to have to dig out of things every year. Like you gotta start putting together a stretch here where you're winning some hockey games. Tennessee taking on Alabama tomorrow, third Saturday in October. Joe, you got Alabama by a touchdown in this game. Ultimately, what do you think the difference is tomorrow for Alabama in Neyland Stadium?
Yeah, like I just like their quarterback a lot better right now than Tennessee's quarterback. And I still like the ability and a lot of things about Nico, but right now he doesn't seem to have a ton of confidence, and he's late and he's missing throws. And I think this could be the day that bolts him too. I mean, this is an opportunity for him. There's nothing like beating Alabama as the Tennessee quarterback, which, by the way, Joe Milton almost did last year. But right now, the way he's playing, it's just, I can't have a ton of confidence in that. And I do have confidence that even like last week, as many things about Alabama that I didn't like in that game, and they looked shaky, Milroe made huge plays to win it, and he has a knack for that.
He does. And, the vertical passing game that they've got with Ryan Williams, I'm really interested to see how Tennessee's defense handles that tomorrow. And then on the other side, I've talked about this all week. Like, I think a big job for Josh Heupel and Joey Halsley this week is building up confidence back in your quarterback as best you can. Now, there's only so much you can do in a week with practice and video and all that. It ultimately comes down to the game. And, Adam Sparks came out with a nice piece on Nico Iamaleava at the Knoxville News Sentinel about kind of his path to get here and the mental makeup that he's got. I would encourage everybody to check that out. It's pretty good. But it's like I think, as you pointed out, there will be plays available for Tennessee to make in this game. Like, I don't know that Alabama's defense is as bad as they put on paper or put out there the last couple of weeks against Vanderbilt and against South Carolina. I also have seen enough of them to be convinced that this is not some vaunted Alabama defense that we've grown accustomed to seeing over the last 15 years. So I think Tennessee's going to have some plays available to them in the passing game. Can they make them? Like, can Nico make the throw? That's going to be, I think, a lot of what the game comes down to tomorrow is when you have plays available to you, which quarterback executes the throw better.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, Alabama's defense looked lights out in that first half against Georgia. And then it's like, okay, you let up, and that happens. They make this huge comeback, and then Vanderbilt is just so different. The South Carolina game definitely, though, was like, okay, so what is happening here? And, of course, now the DC there, of course, 2 years ago, the Alabama fans weren't too happy they were DC after they gave up 52 in Knoxville. But I agree. There are plays that will be there to be made. Dylan Sampson. I think there's a number he needs to hit, in this game. He has to hit a good number, I think. I mean, I think that may be a predictive stat in this game is what Dylan Sampson ends up with on the ground. Because, like, you got to have both things. And obviously he's been a consistently good player. But Alabama's going to try to do what Arkansas did, and for most of the game, do a good job on that run game with light boxes. And then if you do that, you take away the deep stuff and you force Nico to be in an uncomfortable spot.
Joe, very quickly, 1 to 10, where would a Titans win against the Buffalo Bills rank on your surprise scale on Sunday?
The NFL, to me, I don't think the NFL should ever be a 9 or a 10. Like that's for college football where there's massive differences between teams. But I'll give it an 8. I'll give it the max of an NFL surprise scale, an 8.
I'll go 10. That's going to do it for us today here on Robby and Rexrode. We'll be back on Monday morning. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Chasing Big Joe up next. This is 102.5, 106.3, The Game.